Welcome to episode 2 of the Webcomic Beacon Presents First Issue.
I'm Marcus.
I'm Melissa.
And I'm Fes. This week, we're going to take a look at Men of War, #1 by DC Comics, part of the New 52.
Awesome.
One of the best.
Yeah.
The cover. Oh, wait. I wonder if there's more we should talk about.
No?
Yeah, well, let's just dive into it.
All right.
Yeah, why not?
We'll make
Shit.
it fast.
All right.
Yeah, you can cuss on this, right?
Try to make this...
First, impressions on the cover.
Impressions on the cover. I look at this, and I'm thinking, dime a dozen, any sort of video game cover I could find on war.
Every video game released in the last, 6 years?
5, 6 years. It's boring to me. It looks like, oh, this might be a video game. It's not a video game.
See, I like it, though. It is bold. It is simple. It pretty much conveys what you're going to see inside. And
How does it convey that? It's a soldier.
It's got it shows the Sergeant Rock dog tag. So if you know anything about Sergeant Rock, you go, ooh, Sergeant Rock, and pick it up. But other than that, it's just a dramatic, very simple, eye-catching design. When you see it on a wall with all these very, very busy designs, that's what's going to pop out at you.
Probably.
I can understand that, but being just who I am, and I tend to look at video game covers far more often than comic book covers these days, it does just kind of look like, okay, generic Marine. I kind of get the idea of it being really tiresome to kind of sit through just based on this cover. The interiors are a different thing entirely, and I would be very remiss to have missed this just because of the cover. Because honestly, especially in comparison to, say, a Justice League or an Animal Man, the cover is just not all that eye-catching to me because of the dark colors. The dark mostly being black, with a little bit of blue and green. And then given what the content is, I find that to be a little bit of a misnomer. Like, perhaps there are other ways to convey what we were going to see inside.
Right. All right. It does look like decent art for something, but, like I said.
Yeah, it's Viktor Kalvachev, who I rather like. But
The art is great.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with the art in and of itself. It's just that what it conveys is not nearly as interesting as what's inside.
Well, what's inside is, well, I'm not a big military fan of stuff. When I was flipping through this, I'd look at it as, okay, the first few pages I get, okay, generic military setup, suspect a dime a dozen premise here going on. Oh, this one guy, he could have been sergeant, but he's got an attitude, and do-do-do. It's like, I've heard this a fucking million times. So I was like, I mean, it's like, if I was reading this and not for this review, I would have stopped. I was bored out of my mind. Like, if I was reading this on as a webcomic, I'd have been done at page 4. I wouldn't have cared anymore.
But it does give you a fairly elaborate backstory just in 3 pages of talking heads, and then it gets into battle.
Yeah,
Right.
it definitely picks up once you get into battle. Prior to, I was very similar in attitude to Fes. I thought, okay, yes, he could have been sergeant, but he didn't. And then they go on a list, 3 and 4 instances. And it's like, okay, I understood. No, I'm not stupid. I understood.
Right.
And then they get into combat. And I'm like, holy fuck, I'm glad I started reading this comic.
It's not that they get into combat, it's that they parachute in, and suddenly there's this zip-zang boom of, I don't know what the hell is going on here. I thought this was a military thing. Now there's fire everywhere, and they're like, oh, we're gonna die, and then stuff happens! And, okay, so it's kind of exciting and going on, and we're figuring out...
that comic.
You're destroying it. I'm going to tell.
Just a lot of things that are happening, I don't know what's going on, and then this one guy gets away, and it's like, what's going on? What is this comic about? I thought it was about war. Now there's a fucking thing going on, and
Well, they're telling you. It's just that they're not letting on exactly what the specifics are yet.
Yeah,
That's
that's
the
the
problem.
entire point.
That is the point. They are setting up the character of Sergeant Rock.
Such a thing as a fog of war, you see.
Yeah.
The point is they were sent in to do something they thought was routine, and then there's these gods flying around.
No, we don't even
fucking
know
shit
that.
up.
What do you mean? Oh, there's 2 of them?
Yeah.
I didn't even get that the first time. I just know there's this red thing going on.
And
is
then
this
there's a
some
purple
sort of
thing that hits the red
Yeah,
thing.
and it's
why
it's
would
like
you not know this?
so it doesn't reveal anything before the thing is over, and it's like, I'm wondering what the fuck is going on here.
It's the,
I thought this was a military comic. I guess it's another superhero comic, maybe, or or is it?
It's a military comic, but
science
it takes
gone
place
wrong?
in the DC universe, so there are things that are beyond.
Yeah, and it's like I was totally not getting that. It does have some really good lighting. With the color, I mean, it's a very like grungy, dirty looking comic because war and grit and all that, and the light, especially some of these whoosh, looks really good.
Yeah, the art style, I really like the art style. The coloring is just a shade muddy, but other than that, the artists use a lot they use a lot of minimalism to their advantage. They don't put in a whole lot of detail. The detail that is there is kind of muted, so when big things happen, it's very easy to catch your eye in a panel. So it's rather easy to follow the action.
And for me, from a standpoint of the way it was presented, what I really liked about it was it gave the impression of being a normal person having to do a dangerous job within the DC universe. And it kind of gave me that feeling of how dangerous realistically a lot of these superheroes are, because generally you're reading these DC 52 from the perspective of a superhero of one stripe or another. You have a degree of separation from their mortality when you're reading it. Like, you don't invest in their mortality quite so much. When you see here, it's like, oh crap, this was most likely Superman, the red blur thing. In other comics, we've seen Superman portrayed as a red streak as well.
Really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's a couple of them. And then there's a purple one who I hope is Apollo. I don't know that it's him. I don't know who it's supposed to be at all. But that was what intrigued me. And there's the fact that it's not about them. It gave me this really good, and I think appropriate for this sort of comic, feeling of like, oh God, what the hell's going on? I could die. That's kind of what they tend to do when you're dealing with a war comic.
Okay.
They never want to give you this, oh, rah-rah, this is G.I. Joe kind of thing, unless it is G.I. Joe.
Right.
G.I. Joe does that. But G.I. Joe are superheroes wearing military fatigues. With Sergeant Rock, and I don't know about historically, I've never read
He's not Sergeant until the end, though, which I feel is very, very cliche-looking, but...
Well, of course, because you have to set it up. I mean, like, once again, this is something that just people who have... Like I said, they sort of try to have it both ways. Sometimes they're trying to bring in new readers, sometimes they're trying to drag in old readers. This is a combination of the two. With the initial stuff, they're trying to, I think, bring in new readers because they haven't done a really dedicated war comic in years.
Yeah, you got to establish... Obviously, you got to establish the main character first and get it. Okay, this is about what this guy is about. Yeah, I can get that.
And you get this kind of like first step in his transformation.
Right.
However, if you're like an older reader, you're like, oh, holy shit, this is a Sergeant Rock comic, and you'd recognize the character's name. So at the end, it's sort of like in some other books we're going to read, how certain characters don't get their trademark costumes until the very end. That's what they're doing here by giving him that on-site promotion.
Well, all right.
Now, there's also a backup in this issue, which I rather enjoyed.
Yeah,
well.
There's a backup in here called Navy SEALs Human Shields, Part 1 of 3. And
I pick up...
What's a backup? First, explain what's a backup issue.
Oh, a backup is a secondary story inside a single issue of a comic. So you'd have the main story that you bought the comic for, but, they had a few extra pages to fill, so they added a second story that either can feature characters,
like a minor character,
or backstory, or just something some of the artists wanted to do.
Right.
But it's usually very short, 3-4 pages long, maybe a little longer. A lot of times DC will hand this to artists that they want to try out because it's a shorter project and see if they can turn in the project on time, or sometimes it's just one of their bigger name artists going, hey, I just want to do something short with this friend of mine, can we just do something fun? So that's what this is, and honestly I would buy future issues of this comic just to see the backup, because I really liked the backup.
I did too. I thought it was a really nice short story, almost like just in its content, just as horrific as the more over-the-top nature of what you're looking at with the main story.
And the art is fantastic.
Well,
the art is clean, it is sharp, it is easy to understand.
Well,
it's simple, it pops where it needs to. Really, really nice.
There's a couple of scenes, pages where I'm like kind of looking at it, like the face looks a little awkward. Like
it's highly stylized.
Well, I guess I didn't see it as highly stylized. There's just some shots where I was like, it looks a little awkward here, but I did kind of like the art a little bit more. And this one actually felt more like a military comic without having to deal with, oh, DC Universe, there has to be something super going on.
Yeah.
Which was actually a little bit refreshing to see something like that, though. But again, it's not my type of story.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's fair.
No problem with that.
Let's see here. So, final verdict. Can you recommend this to a new reader or not?
I would if they were interested in war stories. Like, if that's the kind of books that they like to read. Like, if they like Tom Clancy and they have a passing interest in, say, Superman. Certainly. So maybe just tell them it's like Tom Clancy meets Superman. I haven't read a lot of Tom Clancy, so that might be wrong.
Okay, so succeed, or fail?
I give it a succeed. It has to be your thing, though.
Okay. I have to go, nah. Sorry.
I say succeed because the art is good, the story was good. Your mileage may vary depending on your personal tastes.
Right, and I've said everything I could already, but there you have it.
Personal taste.
Men of War, issue number 1 from the new DC 52.